Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
And there you are.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I did not do slides, and Jackie, no pressure wherever Jackie is, but she just said, wow, oh, there she is. Wow, you must be good, because I don't have slides, so I hope I can live up to her expectations. Listen, it's a great honor for me to be here today, and it's particularly gratifying to see all the positive changes that RIT and the Saunders College of Business have driven to further support women leadership since 1988 when I graduated. I'm here today to provide you a concept of how to power your potential, establishing a personal BHAG. For those of you that are in the room and listening on, tell me, who has heard of what a BHAG is? Raise your hands. Oh, a few. So of those few that raised your hands, who actually has a personal one? Oh, like I have one maybe, yay. Good job. Well, BHAG stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. It's an idea conceptualized in the book Built to Last, Successful Habits of Visionary Companies by James Collins and Jerry Porras, originally published in 1994. According to Collins and Porras, a BHAG is a long-term goal that changes the very nature of a business's existence. BHAGs are meant to shift how we do business, the way we are perceived in the industry, and possibly even the industry itself. Collins and Porras describe BHAGs on a corporate level as nearly impossible to achieve without consistently working outside of a comfort zone and displaying corporate commitment and confidence and even a bit of arrogance. BHAGs are bigger, bolder, and more powerful than long and short-term goals. They typically take a 10 to 30-year commitment, but they are exciting, tangible, and something that everybody just gets without any further explanation. For example, Facebook's BHAG is to make the world a more open and connected place. Google's BHAG is organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. My company, Global Payments BHAG, is to become a Fortune 500 company. And we established that in 2013. Previously, we had strategic goals, but we didn't really have that stretch goal to become a Fortune 500 company. Today, we are a Fortune 1000 company, and we've been moving up the ladder because we have this goal. BHAGs are measurable. Fortune 500, for example, is measured based on GAAP revenue. And this is something that we can relate to our employee base, and it doesn't matter whether that employee answers the phone for our customers that call in, or somebody that's writing code in our computer area. And we can explain that by saying we have this much revenue, this is where Fortune 500 is, and here's where we are. And today, we're more than 80% of the way there. And this is something that somebody just can get. It's easy to understand. Facebook measures the number of members and where those members are located, and that's how they track their BHAG. Google obviously measures everything. So imagine the power of applying this concept to your own personal career goals. So I'm going to tell you a story and demonstrate the power of a personal BHAG. So I grew up in a little town about 80 miles southwest of here in New York State called Friendship. I went to school, K through 12, with the same kids, same building, and I was one of 39 kids that graduated many years ago. My dad worked in a factory. My mom stayed home, and I was the youngest of 4 girls, and I was the way late baby because there was about a 17, 18-year gap between me and my oldest sister. So almost like a different generation, really. I did have a wonderful childhood, but as you can imagine, money was tight. And even though I grew up in a small town, my dad had served in World War II and was actively interested in the world around him and what was going on, because obviously he literally lived it firsthand in his life. So because of that, he kept up on all the latest technological improvements in the world and advances of what was going on right up until his death about 10 years ago. He was very well read, could debate any kind of historical or world politics, and keep up with holding his own in winning those debates. But, you know, while my dad was well read, he did not have any insights into the business world. And that really meant that he really couldn't mentor me and give me advice on what was happening back in the late 80s in the business world. So just to give you some relevance, he retired in 1984 after 39 years of service with the same company, which really doesn't happen anymore. He was making $25,000 a year after 39 years of service. So when you think about what he accomplished raising a family on that, that's stunning. And what's even more impressive is that his parents did not graduate from high school. He graduated from high school and he raised a family. So in his life, he was very successful. So because of that, even though he couldn't exactly imagine what was going on in the business world, he totally supported, and my mother, education. Go to college. College is important. And so obviously that's what I did. That was what I viewed as my way out, was college. It was a path forward. It gave me, I was really hungering for financial freedom and financial flexibility based on my upbringing. And so you heard from the introduction, I graduated in 1988 from RIT in accounting. I knew I wanted to be in the business school. I couldn't at the time, because I didn't have any mentorship, I couldn't really appreciate what the other degrees could link to a job. So I chose accounting because I could see, oh, accounting degree, accounting job. And I could easily match up, and that's what I did. So, but I really, my whole goal in life at that point in time was I just wanted more. I wanted to be rewarded for performance, and I really wanted that great American dream that we're all so after. So the day I graduated from RIT, I moved to New York City to begin my career at Laventhal & Horwath, a public accounting firm. And I began in the audit staff, and I'm really aging myself now because this is when there was a big 8. And you know, now of course there's only a big 4. And Laventhal was number 9. We had Fortune 1000 customers rather than the Fortune 500, which is what most of the big 4 today do. And just to really bring this back and refresh all your memories, the accounting, the environment, the business environment at the time, the accounting firms were getting sued really regularly and routinely back in the late 80s, early 90s. They were being held accountable for bad audit opinions, which banks were relying on to loan companies money, and realizing that the company wasn't doing as well financially as what the audit opinion suggested. Or, unfortunately, sometimes they were providing an opinion on a company that wasn't even in existence. But remember, this is the day before internet, before cell phones. I mean, I'm really going back there, but and it's hard for you the younger ones in the room to maybe imagine that. But so This meant that the accounting firms were really treated like sole proprietorships or partnerships way before the LLCs that provided liability protection. This is before the days of SOX and all the different regulations that have come out since Enron, for example. Laventhal was no different in terms of getting sued back in the late 80s and early 90s. And by 1990, we had actually taken all the employees across all the cities that Laventhal was in, we had taken a 10% pay cut to save the company. Busy season ramped up, and I was an audit senior and staffed on the TWA audit. Again, I'm aging myself. Does anybody remember TWA? Thank you. It was an airline, and it was headquartered in Kansas City, Missouri. We were working over the weekend, staying on the weekend to save money. I got a call on Sunday from the partner telling me that we had to all come back to New York for a Monday morning meeting, and it was me and 2 other staff on the job. I was like, wait a second, we're doing all this work. We don't want to go back. Oh, no, you have to come back. Okay. So we get back Sunday night. Monday morning, I'm on the subway into Midtown Manhattan, and I see a gentleman reading the New York Times, and I'm standing. He's sitting, and I see on the front page, Laventhal and Horwath declare bankruptcy. I was like, oh my gosh, and and here I am, a 20-something, and you're living, you're just kind of living hand to mouth because you're 20-something, and that's what we do. So I just couldn't believe it. So in my mind, I said, surely we're going to be a bankrupt reorganization so that we could keep going through busy season because the firm needed fees. Oh no, we all got huddled into our largest conference room, and we were told we had 2 days to get our stuff and get out. We didn't get our last paycheck, our last expense check until many months later through the court process. It was devastating for all employed by Laventhal, so we were shell-shocked. So now back to my story of what does this have to do with personal BHAG. This was a transformative point in my career, and we have all had transformative events in each of our lives, and which really creates us and drives us to, and I'll use Dr. Swanson's terminology, to calibrate. We have to reassess and understand what it is that we want to go after and what our point is. And for me, that obviously meant that, well, maybe public accounting's not really for me. And so I ended up going to work for one of my clients, became an assistant controller, and I knew I was driven by the need to get financial freedom. So I worked hard and continued to focus on moving up the ladder. But I really didn't have a specific goal at this point in time. So ultimately, I ended up moving to Omaha, Nebraska, and began work at a payments technology company that had recently spun from a much larger company, and we had at the time about $300 million of revenue, annual revenue. I quickly rose in the ranks of financial accounting, planning and analysis, investor relations, but much of this rise was a bit of trial and error, not due to, because I didn't have a formulated plan. I didn't calibrate like I should have, because I didn't know to. But I still, because I focused on moving forward and taking, every day, putting one step in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, I was successful. Ultimately, I had the opportunity to move to Atlanta, Georgia for another company, and ultimately that led me to be in global payments when I started in 2001. But we both grew up together, and I'll tell you, the company I left to move to global payments, I got to Atlanta from them with a $6 billion merger. Now, if you think about that, I was with that company for 9 years, and both me and the company grew up together, and I was very fortunate to see what that means, because the company had a plan. So I needed a plan, but I still didn't have that big overarching goal. So ultimately, I started in global payments, 2001. Similar story. We spun out of another company, $300 million worth of revenue. Today, we're about $3.9 billion. And we were $400 million market cap. And today, we're about a $12 billion market cap company. So it all sounded very familiar to me, comfortable. But I still didn't have that perfect plan. What is that perfect plan? And I really didn't have a mentor. So I had the opportunity, our CEO and chairman of Global Payments was Paul Garcia. He was a fantastic mentor and basically took me under his wing and really, really demonstrated to me, both in advice and his own personal example, that you needed to feel a little discomfort if you're going to move forward. And that was really eye-opening to me. And if you go back to the definition of a corporate BHAG, it's about that comfort zone and getting out of that comfort zone. And you look around at Uber and Microsoft and Dell and all the companies that we could think of, that's exactly what they did. And we can very much apply that to our own personal lives. So in 2003, I was offered to lead investor relations or planning and analysis. I had a choice. The company had grown and needed to separate the roles. Well, I chose investor relations because, one, I was very good at it. I enjoyed it. But I was also very comfortable in doing it. And unfortunately for me, the executive management team was also incredibly comfortable with me doing that role. So that sounds like that would be a good thing, but not always. So in the meantime, of course, to be transparent, I also had 2 kids and was dealing with a whole working mom juggle, attempting to be everything to everyone. I personally struggled with this and what it would or could do to my career, and the conflict was eating me up. So I intentionally made the decision to keep the status quo, so that I really made the decision to have more of a job than a career, because I needed to deal with things at home. And that's exactly what I did. And a handful of years pass, the company continues to grow, the kids continue to grow, and it all becomes a little bit more manageable. So I realized I was really, really comfortable and really too comfortable, and I wanted more, so what could I do? I began to ask for more projects, and I also finally heeded the advice of Paul Garcia, my mentor, that he so regularly gave me, and I decided I needed to be uncomfortable. But I still needed that goal. When was I going to get that goal? That's when I decided to set a BHAG. I needed a stretch goal, and that goal was to become a CFO. I wanted to be part of an executive team driving the strategy and growth of a company and basically get a seat at the table. That year was 2008. I explored a lot of opportunities in the meantime of what that meant to me, both outside the company, looking at other career opportunities, and I also even looked at an executive MBA program. I began reaching out to women I knew in the industry and asking for help. Hey, what do you know about this? What do you do when you have this? And you realize that, wow, everybody wants to help you, and most people feel honored when you ask for help, and they take it very seriously. And that was a huge help for me in my goal. So on my journey, I realized in hindsight that when I chose investor relations over planning and analysis, I became pigeonholed because I'd been running investor relations for 7 years. It was really difficult for another company to consider me as a CFO. So small startups would be happy to take me as a CFO. However, the pay was not as attractive. And that's a real hard battle for me when I'm motivated in that way to go backwards. So I struggled how I could move my career forward. And I began my journey on getting on industry boards and not-for-profits, and how can I help, if I can't drive the strategy of a company, how can I drive the strategy of an organization? And how will that be meaningful for me? And that helped me cultivate many meaningful contacts. By 2013, I was frustrated that my goal was not going to become a reality. And so I really started to evaluate startup environments. And I regularly, now I say evaluate, but I'm going to use Dr. Swanson's term of calibrate. I regularly was calibrating what my plan was and what more I needed to do to try to hit my goal of a CFO. So I felt I was doing everything I could. And I want to pause here, and it's important to note that a personal BHAG, like I said, should be measurable. For me, that meant title, a seat at the table, and of course, money. But because it's very easy to keep score that way. But while I was getting financial increases, money isn't everything, and I really wanted that seat at the table. And for many, many of you in the room, money might not be your motivator. You might want to do something really big, like improve the food supply in Africa, or start up your own business and become successful enough to franchise that business. There's all sorts of BHAGs that you yourself can set. In October of 2013, the company appointed a new CEO because Paul retired. And that new CEO actually promoted me to EVP and Chief of Staff. And I was so delighted with this promotion because while I didn't achieve the CFO role, I got my C, and I did have a seat at the table. I became part of the executive management team, so I felt, well, that's okay. I did okay. And then recently, our company acquired a large company that was similar to what we do for a living in payments technology in April of 2016, and doubled the size of the company. And at that point, they had had many difficult leadership issues within human resources. And so I was asked, because I have always raised my hand to take more responsibility, I was asked by the CEO, would you be willing to lead human resources? And of course I said, of course. And so for the last 8 months, I have been diligently working on human resources to integrate 4,500 employees from the other company onto the global payments systems. And so that you can imagine that's been a lot of work and effort, but it's been very rewarding. But my story demonstrates the importance and effectiveness of having a personal BHAG. If I had articulated a BHAG to myself back when I was in my 20s or even my early 30s, chances are I would have made different decisions when I left Labenthal, when I might have actually chosen to go work at Cooper's where my partner went and get the foundational experience that might be considered worthy to be a CFO. I also may have elected to take planning and analysis and not investor relations later on in life when I had the choice. But the power of having a personal BHAG, it keeps you focused on the prize. And you have to constantly reevaluate your career. And I love the fact that Dr. Swanson used calibrate, because that's exactly what we all have to do all the time. And it doesn't mean that you can't get there, because I didn't become a CFO, but I definitely got my seat at the table, and really that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to drive the strategy of a company. So I also want to make a point of you have to be a little uncomfortable. Get out of your comfort zone and really, really work at whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. This all gives you confidence in whatever you do, because that's what we women often lack when compared to a man, is, we're seen as not being confident. We often think that we have to have the perfect skill set, or feel perfectly comfortable before we can raise our hand and say, oh, I'll do that. But a man, they just think it's their right. They don't care if they don't know. They're going to just pretend they know and take it. So we have to be more like that. And I always tell my group that works for me, listen, we just have to grin and fake it. Because that's what we have to do. Because I don't know anything about HR. I went to school for accounting. I've done all these financial backgrounds, and I have no knowledge of HR, but I feel confident in my leadership capabilities to rely on the professionals that work for me because they have the expertise. And I want to hire folks that are smarter than me because that's what's going to make the company and the function of whatever you're managing successful. Sorry about that. Let's see. So when you leave here today, you need to consider to yourself, what would be my personal BHAG? You have to challenge yourself and really understand what motivates you. It's very much like the exercise, the CC5 that Dr. Swanson did, but instead of doing an energy of how you can renew yourself, take that and just apply it for your career goals, because it's that same list. And the other thing I'm going to point out is, whatever these goals are, they should be measurable over a time horizon. And everybody can measure whatever that goal is each and every year or quarter or whatever is particular to your goal. Today, the amount of data out there in social media, we all have so much access to information, it's very easy to get overloaded. Oh, what should I be focused on? And Dr. Swanson touched on that in her earlier talk. You really have to filter things out and pick what's meaningful to you and what will help move you forward. Don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask somebody that you admire for help, advice. Like I said earlier, they are so willing to give it. Most people are honored, as I said, and they will take you seriously. And it's a beginning of many years' worth of a positive relationship. And then, of course, don't be afraid to grin and fake it. That is the way forward, and you've got to be confident, and you really have to believe in yourself, because you can do it. So in case you want to know what's next for me, my current BHAG is to gain a seat at a table in a publicly traded company, because I would like to be on a board of directors. So that's my current focus, and I'm currently working on different development opportunities to help propel me forward. So what I want you all to take away is, what is your personal BHAG? What does that look like? And go think about it and really apply it to yourself, because you deserve it and you can do it. So that's it. I'm happy to take questions. I really appreciate your time today. So thank you.
Okay, so Lauren and Amanda are here with microphones. So questions, what kinds of questions can we ask today that you're interested in knowing more about?
Oh my gosh, I heard that you guys were a talkative group.
Right here, Lauren. Thank you.
I'm wondering if there were specific tools or things that you evaluated to help you determine what your BHAG is. I think many female young professionals like myself have that same type of goal right away of just becoming financially independent, and we don't know what that looks like down the road, and it's hard to get that bigger picture and that long-term picture when you're focusing your energies there. So what are some of the ways or the tools that you use to help determine your BHAG?
That's a great question. So I honestly don't know of any set tools, although there are a lot of planning tools out there in the marketplace that just help you think through your goals. But I'll be honest, you know, the good old-fashioned blank piece of paper is a great start, and you really need to figure out what motivates you first. I spent years just knowing I wanted to go forward. I didn't articulate a goal just because I didn't have that early mentorship. And I tell you, my kids are grown, I'm empty nester, and because my husband and I are very familiar with business and just life in general, we've given them a lot of skills and tools that otherwise they might not have filtered out because there are so many different pieces of information out there. And we tell them you need to consider what makes you happy, what's your passion, and be honest with yourself. You have to own your decision of whatever that is. So, you know, a lot of folks, I'll use my son as an example. When he first moved to New York, he works in New York, he's an investment bank analyst. He lived up near Central Park. It's a nice, beautiful area. It's probably where I would like to live. It didn't really, but it was walking distance to his office. That's what he thought he wanted. But then, of course, it wasn't the hip and hopping in place for a 20-something-year-old, so he wanted to move 4 months later. I mean, my son moved all the time. And so he was trying to tell my husband and I, you know, well, I'm moving because I'm going to save money. Well, no, it was maybe $50 difference, you know, per month, maybe. So we said to him, look, you've got to own your decision. Why are you really moving? You know, be honest with yourself. So then he's like, okay, fine, I'm moving because, you know, where I live now is not hip. I'm moving to the hip place. And that's true when you're planning that career. So I don't have a set tool, but a blank piece of paper saying what motivates me and list them out, much like the worksheet that was handed out earlier, and then figure out what does that mean for you and what's a realistic goal. A corporate BHAG can take up to 10 to 30 years. Personal one is probably, I'd go on a 10-year plan, but then make mini goals every 2 years. But I would recalibrate and evaluate on a regular basis. Definitely annually, maybe even semi-annually. So it's a great question. I wish I had something magical to say, boom, this is a tool. Maybe I could, you know, make one and then actually patent it. That would be good. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.